Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome into the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And we got a lot of stuff to get to coming today. Obviously, got to talk about these last couple games. Just got done listening to Ja Morant speaking to the media ahead of his first game coming up this week. And also got some trade rumors and stuff going on, a lot of stuff going on in terms of roster-wise that we're going to get to as well. But got to start with the stuff that's on the court. And obviously, the Grizzlies have lost their last 3 games. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen is this explosion from Jaren. And it's been kind of crazy to watch. Back-to-back 40-point games, which has been really crazy. Only the second person to ever do it. And I really hate that they both happened in losses just because – like the way that he's been playing, especially from like going ISO a lot of the times, like he's not getting a ton of help from his teammates or anything. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the times they are giving him the ball and he is going and scoring these buckets on his own. So over the last 5 games, averaging over 30 a game and everything like that. He's done a great job. Obviously, the block numbers aren't as insane as they were last year, but he's doing good on block numbers. But he's also been better in terms of getting steals as well. So I think that's been adding to like the defensive stuff. So shout out to Jaren, just because it really felt like these last 2 games, if it wasn't for him, like they wouldn't even have been in these games at all. So that's why I was like, got to start by giving a shout out to him, because this is by far the best offensive stretch of his career. And if he can just keep this up, like obviously not 40 a game, like nobody's expecting him to average 40 a game, but if he can be more of this player compared to like the player we saw earlier this season where he had a couple bad games and stuff like that, which that's always going to happen. But if he can try to be consistently more of the 20 point per game scorer like he has these last 5 games, scoring over 20 in all those games, like if he can continue that consistency, I think it's going to help the Grizzlies take it to a new level when Ja gets back and everything like that. And even if they don't turn it all the way around, I think that like the games will just be a lot better.
Yeah. I got to start by saying I don't want to brag. I hate to say I told y'all so, but I kind of told y'all so. And what I mean by that is I said it, I think either last week or the week before. He wasn't going to be, I said it, Jaren, you got to trust like the track record. Like basically Jaren has been up, 40 per career. I think he's averaged like 17 points. I think he's shooting like 30 or 46% from the field and like 34 or 35 from 3. Like he wasn't going to, because he had that bad stretch, like I said, where, you know, it was on Twitter where it's like he was shooting like 28% from the field, 15% from like 3. Like it was bad. But I'm like, you know, for me, I always say, like, not just with him, just with other players, like, you got to trust their track record. They're not going to always be this bad. And then when we consider the context of Jaren, he's going to get better. Like, we've seen it before. And considering a roster, it's going to get better. It just takes time, especially now. And it has. Now, granted, it hasn't really led to any wins. But, again, I've been said this before. We've seen these, you know, this roster's in a state where even if your best players are playing good, your margin of error is so small that you can still lose games where they're having 40 or where both of Jaren and Bane are having 30, you know, a piece. It's going to happen, or it has happened. So, but I mean, in spite of this, you know, Jaren has been more efficient. Obviously, I think a lot of it, again, I think a big thing of it, a lot of it is his jumper starting to come back around. I think over the last 5 games, I think you even mentioned like his 3 ball, he's shooting the ball a lot better. Whereas, and again, the percentage still don't look great on the season. I think he's at like 33% on the season. But even then, it's like, the jumper starting to fall along with attacking the basket more, getting to the free throw line more. Obviously, I guess, I know people going to point at the rebounding. I think the rebounding can be better. Obviously, I would like it to be better. But considering the context, I can't really be too mad at it because, again, he's doing a lot, obviously, offensively. Like again, I'm surprised in that Houston game where he had 44. Like I was really trying to figure out how they were going to score. Like I was being so serious when Bane was out. I'm like, how they going to score 50 points? Like I mean, I know Jaren's going to score. Like Jaren almost had 50 by himself, so I respect it. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that he's starting to play like this because again, it coincides. We'll talk about it with with Ja coming back. Obviously, again, like you said, I don't expect 40, but again, for me, if you have a healthy Bane, you have a healthy Jaren and Ja, I would comfortably want to see him get at least consistently. I've always asked is to be like 18, like 20, maybe 21 points a game with all three of them together. Like, him being like probably the third option in that, which is fine. But if he can do that efficiently, and then if he's hot, like he's been the last couple of games where he has like some 40 balls, like, then, you feed the hot hand. But, hopefully this is a trend in the right direction, what we've seen for the last like week. Hopefully this is really, it stays around, which I think it will. I'm not really too worried about it. Obviously, again, don't expect 40 a night. That I don't, especially when Ja get back. Look, I don't expect his usage to be that high. But I do expect efficient, an efficient 20. That's all I'm asking. So it's been good to see, in spite of this losing, it's been good to see Jaren, get back to himself. And so I just want to see how it all looks when all three of them are back on the court together.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, yeah, like you said, a lot of people mentioned the rebounding, which the rebounding can be better for sure. But I want to say, like I've always said, rebounding is not like a singular thing. I think the team as a whole needs to be better at rebounding. Like it feels like everybody needs to be better at boxing out and stuff like that. And then there are times where if Jaren is switching on the perimeter or Jaren is the person contesting the shot, like it's hard to be the person to contest a shot and get the rebound. Like that can be kind of hard. So you need other guys to like rebound by committee as well. But like still, it doesn't mean Jaren can't be better as well. I think Jaren has had a lot of times where he could have been better at boxing out and stuff like that, and being a better rebounder and everything too. So yeah, I think it's partly him, partly the team as a whole has to just be better in general. But yeah, the last couple games, like I said, been awesome to see this from Jaren. Like you said, it just I hate that the roster right now is in a place to where back-to-back 40 pieces don't equal back-to-back wins. You know what I mean? Especially from a guy who, when your team is fully healthy, is usually the third offensive option. It's like, oh, you got the dude who's usually the third offensive option putting up back-to-back 40 balls, and you lose both of those games. And then in that Rockets game, obviously Bane was out too, but I think you just kind of saw it was literally like whenever Jaren wasn't on the court, it was just horrible. It was just so bad. It was like that. Like I think it was a lineup where it was like Gilliard and Roddy and Zaire and Santi, and it was just not working. It was basically just Jaren, Vince Williams, and Derrick Rose to play good in that game. But then everybody else besides that just didn't really contribute that much, just in general. So it was just really tough. Like that game was one of the tougher games to watch, just because it was just so like back and forth. Because it's like, wow, you're watching Jaren, like this is arguably the best performance Jaren's ever had in his career, and it's not like. And this is what I always say, like that first game he had, that first 40 piece that he had, I think he made like 9 threes. Like that was just something. Oh, he just made everything that night. Right now, it's like we are seeing him. This man had 44 points, and it was driving to the basket, attacking people, getting to the line. Like this was like a different level than like that first one. And then it's just like as soon as he goes to the bench, it's just nothing. It's just horrible. So I think that was just like a kind of a tough thing to watch. But shout out to Tripp for that, because I know that has to be frustrating too. Going out there and like dropping 40 in back-to-back games and losing. I know he's frustrated with that too, because winning is the most important thing to all these guys. But yeah, we're gonna get into like some of the trade rumors and stuff like that, the roster stuff probably at the end of the show. Because there's a lot that we can talk about, with Jalen Noel's second 10-day contract ended and everything like that. But I do want to get on to the biggest thing for our show today, which is the very imminent return of Ja Morant, which will be happening this week on Tuesday, correct? Yes, Tuesday against the
Tuesday.
Pelicans.
Yeah, Tuesday against.
TNT. It's gonna be a movie, man. I'm excited. Got a couple things to talk about with Ja coming up. Obviously, there was that court case between the fight that happened at one of the pickup basketball games, and they had the civil case going on with that, which had some really funny stuff, honestly. Like, I've never seen a court case about a pickup basketball scrap, but like just seeing people like under oath teaching people how to check in a basketball is just like peak American justice system. I know he's not a criminal case, but just peak American justice system. And then asking him if the diamonds are real and like all that stuff. Like some of it was funny. Obviously, I do think when you get into the situation, Ja could have handled it better and all that. I still don't think this is something that needs an entire court case, but I digress, right? Ja spoke to the media for the first time since I don't know when. It's been a long time since he spoke to the media. Now, this is the first time in a long time Ja spoke to the media, talking about the second suspension, everything like that. And before I kick it to you, the one thing I'll say, the main thing I noticed was it felt like his tone was just completely different than that Jalen Rose interview. Because in the Jalen Rose interview, it kind of felt like Ja was saying, okay, I made a mistake, but I'm good. You know what I mean? I went to this counseling thing for a week or so. I'm fine. I'm good. I've gotten all those issues out, right? Whereas this version of Ja, the person that spoke to the media today, was more like, I'm taking accountability. I know that I'm still need to get better, and it's about my actions now. And it's like I think he finally gets it. Like I think he gets it now way more than he did during that first suspension.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, I think, I didn't expect him to talk. Well, I mean, before they announced it, I didn't expect him to talk until we got the games. Obviously, we heard it. I mean, just now or earlier today. I'm not really. I won't say I don't care about it. I mean, it sounds good, but again, like I think he even said it, like he can't really say anything that's gonna really move anybody. Like it's just about the actions. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Like obviously, I'm gonna care what he has to say when the game starts because I want to hear his perspective on the game. But as for what is going on in the past year or so, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. Like he said, he's going to say all the right things. I didn't expect him to say anything crazy or like it was nothing bad, nothing, but it wasn't nothing like, oh man, like he did these things. Like so, for me, it's just about hooping and staying out the way. Obviously, he had to stuff to the media. Like the media was going to like they that's what the media do. They go want to talk to him. They want him to give answers and about where what has he done. Like they're going to ask those rhetorical type of questions. Like what have you done over the past couple months? How you feeling? Like like do you feel some responsibility of losing? Like which he did say he do. Which again I've been on this pod saying he takes part of the blame. And I mean obviously he's going to say that probably, but like yeah. I mean, like you said, with the Jalen Rose thing, like it's a different tone. That's really the only thing you can kind of go off of in terms of it being different. It's like the tone. Like the tone seems more. I don't even know. I wouldn't say sincere, but it just seems like more of a, like a. I wouldn't say it is. It seems more of a mature tone, I guess you could say, about the situation versus, um, it being like in that Jalen Rose interview, whereas I wouldn't say it was immature, but it just felt like, like, hey, like we're just here to be here, like let's just get this over with, like yeah, I did it, but like I didn't really, like it's like basically like a slap on the wrist, and I think I might have said it at the time, like it was a slap on the wrist. So, you know, and even but again, like he said, like it had to happen again for him to kind of understand what's going on and what's at stake, which I think we'll see going forward, or that's what I hope to see. But yeah, I mean, it was good to see Ja talk to him because I think, like you said, or you didn't know when he talked to the media last. I think the last time he talked to the media was like probably end of press conference, like end of season press conference, like after they lost. And when he was saying like I need to be better off the floor and this and that, I think that was the last time we saw him speak to the media. So it's been what, May, so that's been some months, almost half a year, so type of thing. So yeah, obviously, it's good to see him. And again, like it's good that he's been around. Like it's not like I mean, this is the first time the media's seen him, but he's been around the team the whole time. So, now it's really about again, like just what got two more games until he gets to play. So, like I said, he's excited. I think a lot of fans are excited to see him play. obviously I'm ready to see him play because again, I want to see the trio play again. Like that's really my main thing is seeing Ja, Jaren, and Bane play together again. Like that's what ultimately matters to me right now is them playing as many games as possible. So yeah, I'm ready for Tuesday. It's gonna be interesting to see how he kind of plays. I don't know what he's gonna do per se. I mean, again, he could be on some, as I like to call it, Ja Rubio stuff, where he's like basically just passing, acting like he don't want to score, and then he could be on some, hey, like I'm finna come out and get like 30 off the first game. I don't know. I don't know what to expect, but I mean, I do. But him just being on the court alone will add value, of course, because he is an All NBA player, top, in my opinion, top 15 to 20 player in the league. So it's like, adding a guy like that is going to help, obviously, in a lot of ways. So we're all ready to see it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he said it in that, like in when he was talking to media, is he's just as ready to see the fans as the fans are to see him. Uh, I think that sitting out for those 25 games and then them losing as much as they have, I think that has had an effect on him too, because it did also feel like during that last suspension, when he came back, it almost felt like he thought he had to take a back seat to everybody else. Whereas now it's like when he's coming back, he can see like, nah, they need you to be the guy. Like they need you to come back and be Ja. You don't need to come back and be like you said, Ja Rubio. Now, obviously, in the first game, maybe I'm not saying he needs to go for 40 in the first game. Like we have to have realistic expectations. But I think how aggressive he is, I think that'll be telling to see like how aggressive he's going to be to start out. I'm expecting him to be pretty aggressive though. Like I'm expecting him to come out ready to play. I mean, this is a guy where if you look at obviously the sample size is low, but he has when you look at just season openers, he has some of the highest average scoring in season openers in the NBA. Like he has one of the highest averages like in NBA history in terms of the first night of the season. Now I don't know if this would count for him. I don't know how they keep those stats because I know it's not the first game of the season, but like he has a track record of coming out in that first game and being on go and being ready to go. So I'd expect that. And now he's had more time off and he's had to watch his team out there play and and as a hooper, like it's kind of like that thing where when you lose in a pickup game and you got to sit and watch everybody play and you just sitting over there mad. Like that's kind of what I feel like Ja's been doing. It's like you're out there watching. It's like you got to wait. Like you got next, but there's 3 dudes ahead of you, and you know that. And then it's like you got to watch your team, and your team goes out there and loses and all that kind of stuff too. So I feel like it's kind of like that. And I feel like that's been I think it's gonna make him better, like he said, like in that stuff. I think that this experience and everything is gonna make him better in the long run. Obviously, you still wish it never had to happen, but now that it has happened, I think just continuing to take the next steps forward and everything like that is the most important thing. And the number one thing I always say when it comes to stuff like this is that if Ja comes back in hoops, everybody like obviously he's not going to forget about it and it's going to take time, but people are not going to think about this. Like if he comes back and he's that same level of player, like a lot of people are going to forget about it. Like that's just how, for better or for worse, that is how, especially in the sports world, that's how stuff works. A lot of the times there's people that have done way worse things than what Ja did who have come back and been celebrated. So if you come back, put your head down, play basketball, everything's gonna be fine. So that'll be my number one advice to Josh. Just keep his head down, get ready to play basketball, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, that's really the biggest thing. Like I said, hoop and stay out the way. That's all I care about, man. Just be smart, man. That's literally it. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for too much. It's just being smart because that's literally all what happened in terms of decisions. Like he even said, he made a lot of mistakes, even stuff that we don't even know about. Like he said with his family, like he said, like he made a lot of mistakes. So it's about cleaning that up. That's all it's about. It's not about because it'd be different if we all felt like he can play. It's not that. It's not, and because again, he hasn't been, and it's not like he's been available or not been available because he's been hurt. Like that was a real big concern for his whole thing. It's like he's going to get hurt. It's not because of that. It's because of just making dumb decisions and just being dumb. Just that's all I'm asking. Just hoop, be smart, be aware, make smart decisions. That's all I'm asking. That's my biggest plea. Just be smart. Not really, like I've been said, you can change this and that. It's about moving smart, regardless of what you're doing. Just move smart, move smarter, and just hoop. So that's really my biggest thing. But I mean, I do it. I have hope that will happen now this time around. And so you can all the past is the past. You can't do nothing about it. Like in terms of the situation where they're in right now, you can't get those games back. And same for Ja, he can't get that. I mean, he probably can't get that money back that he's lost, but he can't get some of the stuff back. You know what I mean? Like it's still there. It's always gonna be there. But it's about how you can move forward with it. So he can move forward. The Grizzlies can move forward now, and well, hopefully a Tuesday. And like you said, as long as they're hooping and starting to win, that you know how the media goes. They're gonna be like, "Oh, can the Grizzlies make a run?" Like that's how the media is gonna be. They're gonna forget about it as long as you do what you need to do. Keeping the main thing. So that's what I hope will happen.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I did want to get into a little bit about like where the team sits, like when Ja gets back. Obviously, these next two games they're playing the Rockets and the Thunder. Those are two solid teams. Thunder being one of the best teams in the West, so there is a chance that they are 6-19 when he comes back. So that will put you 13 games under 500 if they lose these next two. Hopefully, they can at least win one of these next two games. That's what I would be hoping for, then at least be to 7 wins, which still you're behind the 8 ball, whatever, in terms of like making a run and getting into the play-in. But the biggest thing that I will say just for Grizzlies fans in general is that even if the Grizzlies don't turn it all the way around, because like if they turn this around, it would take like it would be one of the greatest turnarounds in NBA history. Like I'd have to look it up, but I can almost guarantee that there's not any teams that start at 6-19 before now, or whatever they're going to be. If they are 6-19, 7-18, 8-17, whatever it is, and then made the playoffs. Like if there has been one, there hasn't been many, and it would be a big turnaround. But even if they don't turn it all the way around, just know that like we have made it through the tough part. Like we have made it through the hardest part of the year, right? The rest of the season, whether or not the Grizzlies end up turning it all the way around, is going to be way better, way more fun to watch. As long as you have Ja, Jaren, and Bane and they can stay healthy, if you have those three guys, you're going to have a chance in every game. Because you saw even with Jaren and Bane, they still had a chance in a good amount of these games. You know what I mean? Now, obviously, there's a couple is like, okay, they're not going to win regardless. But they've had a good chance. Like, they've had some close losses and some stuff like that, especially early in the season before they had more injuries besides just missing Ja. But I feel like, Ja coming back is going to be so big, not just for him, but for Jaren and Bane too. And they can kind of go back to being like, oh, this is what it's like when I don't get double teamed every time I touch the ball. Right? Oh, Bane is like, oh, I'm not getting face guarded by the best defender on the other team anymore. You know what I mean? And it just makes it kind of is like a trickle down effect. And you go kind of player by player. And then it's just like you get to see guys kind of fall back into their normal roles. And I think that's the big thing is that when Ja comes back and everything, we're going to see what this team really can look like, even with some more flaws on the roster around them, because those flaws are not going to be fixed easily, right? But we can see just like what this version of those three, plus, Vince Williams and guys like that, can really be for this team going forward.
Yeah, I think the thing about really just that can happen, like especially with the trio, like you said, they're gonna win games. Like that's why I said they're not gonna be like bad, like in that sense, right? Like they're just not gonna be like super bad. Because again, like I think even last year, I think I pulled it up. Like last year in the regular season, they only played 30 games together, but even in those 30 games, they were 20-10. And that, like you said, that was with like a worse version of, I guess you could say, Bane, well, a Bane that wasn't healthy. And then obviously Jaren, I mean, still was good, but like still, wasn't the same type of half court scorer. Played, they didn't play a lot together with, or all three of them didn't play together a lot. Ja was in and out the lineup a lot of the time because of the suspension stuff and little stuff like that. So all those little factors, you could see them winning games. So that's why I don't think they're going to be bad when he gets back. But again, for me, it's the biggest thing has just always been like, can you make up the room that you've already basically? Can you make up for the games you've already lost and get back up in the standings, which they possibly can. Like you said, like it'd be a run. And I'm gonna compare it. I think I've said it before. It was a while ago when they started out like 0-4, 0-5, or wherever. Similar. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but if they do it, it's going to be reminiscent of the 2004, 2005 Chicago Bulls. They started like the same as the Grizzlies. Like they started like 3-12, 3-15, or something like that, and they ended up going to be the 4th seed in the East. Now, granted, they lost in the first round, but they ended up, I think, with like 47 wins or 48 wins that year. And they started bad. Like they started like the same as the Grizzlies, basically. They started like 1-8. Like they were bad for most of the time. But around December, January, they started to turn it around. They started to win a lot more games, and then they started coasting. And obviously the context is a lot different. That's the Eastern Conference. We're in the Western Conference. I forgot who all was on that team. But the point is, it can be done. Now, that's the only real team I can think about that has done that and be like, to get up. That's like probably the best outcome is getting back up now, and like avoiding playing, being like top 6 seed. Like that would be the kind of scenario for them. But it is possible, especially with the talent that this team has at the top. If they can cut down the margin of error, little stuff, clean up little things. Guys, like you said, get back in their, to their real roles where they're not playing 30 minutes a night, where they're really playing more 15, 20 minutes. Guys like Vince Williams, maybe a David Roddy, Derrick Rose, I'm trying to think of terms of the guards, but just really the guard room, like those guys playing, they don't have to overexert themselves. So, when you add guys like Mark Smart back into the mix, which I think he'll be back around the same time Ja's back, which is probably this week, because I think they said he's trying to do 5-on-5 this weekend coming up. So, I do think he'll be back around the same time. Luke probably be back maybe a couple weeks after. So you're getting guys back, you're getting offense back. I think that will help. So yeah, I mean, I'm ready to see it because I do think they will have a chance to make a run at this. But again, it's just they got to understand that I've been said the margin of error is very small. They can't have those games where you're losing to a team that you should beat. You just can't. You can't afford that. Like you have to be clean, crisp, and honest. And really, biggest thing is you got to start winning at home now, especially with Ja getting back. That's the biggest thing. You're 1-10 at home. Like this is a team that cannot be 1-10 at home if they want to make the playoffs. So you just can't be that. I'm not saying they got to be, undefeated going forward when Ja gets back, but you got to be better. You can't be 1-10. 1-10 is just, it don't even sound right for the Grizzlies to be 1-10. It don't even sound right when I say that. But that is the reality of the situation. They're better on the road, and we talked about them last year. They were bad on the road. Now it's the opposite. It's like, man, you can't win. It's just like, man, it's just we saying this like if you told me they were going to be 1-10 to start this season and be better on the road, I wouldn't believe you. But hey, it happens. But it happens. So I'm really excited to see them play, all them get together. Like they said, that's why I think the confidence is not wavered for them. Because I think even Josh said it, like they're trending in the right direction. Obviously, these last 3 games, it's kind of hard to say they trended in the right direction. It's kind of been more of the same, but you can kind of see like they've been better. Like it's been less of stuff that we have seen where like they're missing rotations. For me, it's just more so about a talent issue versus them like a schematic type of issue. They're just not making shots, so they just don't have the talent in these last 3 games to win, or the consistency. But I think when you add guys back, especially just getting Ja back for sure, these games start to be more winnable because you got to think in that Houston game they almost won and they have no Bane or Ja. And you know what I mean? Like if they had Bane, they might have won that game. Or that one game I think they lost against Dallas, you get Ja back, you probably win that game. So like little games like that, you're adding a 25 points per game guy, like you're probably gonna win those games. So they I see why they feel a lot confident, and they have started like this before. I think it was Ja's rookie year where I think they started like 6-16 or 6-17, somewhere around there. Basically started bad, and then ended up being 500 by I think before COVID hit because that was the COVID year. It ended up being like 500 right when COVID hit, like and the season stopped, and obviously they got hurt in the bubble. But they've seen this before, so that's why they're I don't expect them to waver. You know what I mean? Like I don't expect their energy or their mindset to be bad. You know, so that because they've seen it. You know, they've seen them be able to turn things around. So yeah, you know, we just gotta wait and see. But I am excited to see the whole picture as the weeks come along.
Yeah, for sure. And get into like this last part too, because we're talking a little bit about the roster kind of around them. Is we got to get into some of these trade rumors and like Ross rumors, stuff like that. Obviously, Jalen Noel's second 10-day contract did expire, so it doesn't look like they're going to do anything with him for now. Seems like they are going to let him walk. But as of today, I think almost every player in the NBA is now eligible to be traded, like people that were just signed last year. So if there was a time for a trade like to happen, it would be this time because not only are there now a lot more people eligible to be traded, we also know that when Ja comes back, one of their roster spots is going to be gone. Now, it seems like they're probably going to end up cutting Kenneth Lofton Jr., which I do hate it for him, but it seems like that's kind of what's going to have to happen at this point, unless they can find a consolidation trade in the next couple days, which we do know that in the trade rumors, they've talked about Jake LaRavia and John Conchar both possibly being traded somewhere. But honestly, to me, I kind of feel like those guys probably don't have enough value to actually get something meaningful back. As much as I know Jake is still young and everything like that, but he hasn't shown on the floor that he can be an NBA player, just like straight up. So I don't know if he's gonna warrant the kind of stuff that they think that he might in terms of trade value. I don't know if Conchar is really gonna have that much trade value. It's like, and I think that's kind of the issue is that all the guys that the Grizzlies have that do have that trade value where you could actually get something back are guys that you would rather have on the team. Like, they just traded for Marcus Smart. They just traded for Luke Kennard last season. Those are the two guys that probably have the most trade value. But I don't expect the Grizzlies to listen to calls on those guys most likely, uh, unless it's for an upward swing, a bigger wing, or like somebody like they were looking at OG last year, like somebody like that maybe. But in terms of just to release a roster spot or free up some roster spots, I don't expect them to do something like trading Luke or trading Smart. Like they just got those guys. So when you're looking at these rumors, obviously, like I said, it's like Conchar and LaRavia, probably Zaire, Roddy, like some of those guys would have the most value, I guess, but they still don't have a ton of value on the open market. So you probably have to trade multiple guys to get one back, which wouldn't be the worst thing for the Grizzlies just because they will open up that roster spot. But I just like to see how other teams value those guys, because that could be like it could be like the difference between making a trade or just having to cut somebody in this next week.
Yeah. I mean, again, when in terms of cutting people, like at least for the immediate future, like it's going to me. I've been said it's going to be Lofton. Like they signed Bismack Biyombo's contract. I remember, I forgot. I think it was Bobby Marks who tweeted about it when Biyombo got signed. Basically, they structured his contract in a way that it could be traded for at the deadline. So I don't think they're going to cut a dude that they did that specifically for that reason, especially a guy that started as many games as he has. Even if his minutes have gone down, he wasn't supposed to be a 30-minute guy or 30 minutes playing a night anyway. I think he's going to get kept, and obviously they'll cut Lofton. But in terms of the LaRavia and contrast stuff, yeah, I mean they're trying to open spots, and I personally think a lot of it is to open a spot for Vince Williams, because I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think they all see it. I mean, players see it, coaches see it, GM got to see it. Hopefully, that Vince Williams needs a spot. I'm not saying he needs to play 25 minutes a night, because again, I think all those guys are more so back end rotation guys. But he looks better than all the other back end rotation guys. He clearly needs to play minutes, even if it's not. I'm not saying he needs to play 30, but he clearly needs 15, 20 minutes over those other guys. And so, especially if he's going to hit shots. That's been my biggest thing. Can you hit shots and can you defend? He's doing that. So as long as he's hitting shots, play him as much as you need to. So, especially considering the options they got on his roster. So that's probably what they're trying to do. Because again, I think, with a two-way contract, I think you can play like a max of like 50 games or something like that. I forgot what the max is, but it's coming up soon around like trade deadline or something like that. So they're going to want to make a roster spot for him because they understand, hey, he's been a fixture in his rotation now. Like even with, because you got to understand, like people got to understand, like in spite of, like they've been like Jenkins has been trying things. If anybody hadn't seen, like he's been, I think he didn't play X last game, barely played Conchar the other game, has played Zaire. Like he's been changing stuff up. Started Santi, didn't start Biombo, but in all that, guess who's played? Vince. So like he's been a fixture in that rotation. So it's going to I think that's really why they're going to try to open that roster spot. Like you said with the other people, they're not. I don't know if they're going to make a big deal right now because I don't know if it's going to be available. I always said bigger trades are usually available in the summer. Usually you don't get those. Like I know the Lakers had a big trade last year where they basically did a whole revamp on their roster, but that is not the reality in terms of that happens every year. But I do expect them to do a deal. Don't know what, but obviously it's not going to happen really right now just because it's still early in the season. A lot of that stuff don't really happen until mid-January, close to the deadline. Oops, excuse me. So I think, that's what they're really just hoping for is that they can make a deal then. Now, again, if they can make a big deal at the deadline, I think they will. Not in the sense of like they're trading like 5 picks. But again, I've been advocating for more competent role players. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow were able to get a deal like I'm just gonna throw names out there like Denny Abia, Daniel Gafford for I don't know what is on this roster, but like something like that. I could see at the deadline maybe 1 or 2 of those guys. But like you're talking about, like you said, like a bigger wing, like names like we've heard before, like OG Anunoby, Jeremy Grant, like those type of names, like that I don't think will happen at the deadline, especially consider the context of some of those guys like OG Anunoby, where he's only on a 1-year deal. Like he's going to be a free agent this year. So like people are not going to try to give up assets for him. Like there's certain people that, are on 1-year deals and stuff like that. Like they're just not going to do. So, I think you'll see a lot more smaller moves around the margins. Because again, like you said, I think part of their thinking is that they haven't had a job with this roster and they've been hurt. So they kind of want to see. Now, obviously, you're not going to see probably BC, and obviously you're not going to see Adams, but they kind of want to see the full picture before they even do any moves, like big moves. Like I don't think like Lofton and Bismack is a big move for them in the sense of like it's changing too much. But like in terms of like getting rid of like 2 or 3 guys, they want to wait on that. I think personally, I think that's what they're going to wait on. They're going to like let's get Job back, let's get Smart back, let's get Luke back, then go from there, see what we need to do, and then when we get to the deadline, make a move if it's there. If not, just play out the season. So that's kind of how I think they're viewing it. That's just me assuming. So, but yeah, it's kind of stuff we already kind of knew, just based off how if you're watching the game, you're looking like, okay, they're gonna have to do something. Like they're just capped out with roster space. So like it's just something that there's been a topic. Like it's not something that surprising to me, especially when I saw it. So it's just more about a matter of when and not if this happens. Like it's just about a matter of that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the main thing I would say too, kind of to close, is that they're like the roster right now, it should look a lot different. Like by the time we get to the trade deadline, they're going to do something. Not exactly sure what it's going to be. And like I said, it might be hard just because they don't have a ton of guys that have like big trade value. They got a lot of guys that are on rookie contracts, and the guys that aren't on rookie contracts are either your big 3 who you're not going to move basically under any circumstances right now in Ja, Jaren, and Bane. And then you have D Rose, who's not making a lot of money, and you just signed him. You have Smart and Kennard, who are making money. But like I said, just traded for them within this calendar year as well, right? And, BC and Steven Adams, who are 2 guys that do make enough money to where maybe you want to trade, are both hurt. So most teams, whether or not you agree with they should trade those guys or not, that's not even the point. The main point is most teams, even if you would want to trade them, are not going to want to trade for somebody who's going to be out for the season, right? So it gets hard to kind of make those deals just with how the roster is right now. But I do think eventually, like as guys get healthy and as guys start to come back, and maybe they can showcase some of these guys on the bench a little bit more, which I think is one of the reasons why, Jake Laravia was playing in the last game, kind of showcase what these guys can do to other teams a little bit. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that really helped him that much because he didn't play great. So it's one of those things where maybe you just sit him down. Maybe you say, okay, we're just going to wait. Maybe you make that decision and you say, okay, yeah, we're just going to go all in and we're going to make a trade now. But I'd expect them to probably make that first roster move, obviously, when Ja comes back. So I'd probably say we're probably going to hear something on Monday about somebody being cut, probably locked in, but not 100% sure who it's going to be, obviously. But we know that has to happen for Ja to play, and we know Ja is going to play on Tuesday regardless. So that's going to be something to watch out for. And then, yeah, it's just clear that this team needs more people that can put the ball in the basket, just overall on a consistent basis. Obviously, they got some of those guys out as well, but I still think they are going to need more just because between Roddy, Zaire, and Laravia, none of them have taken the jump you needed from them. Like we talked about all offseason, it's like you were going to need one of those guys to make a jump. In the preseason, it looked like Zaire might be that guy, but he just hasn't lived up to those expectations at all this season. So it's like you have to start getting real about where the team is, where these guys will be, not only this year, but next year. Like, do you have confidence that Zaire Williams, David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, like these guys are going to be solid NBA players by the time next year rolls around? And I just don't think they've shown enough. And it's funny that the guy that has shown the most is the one that was drafted the lowest in Vince Williams. Like, I think he's the guy that right now I have the most, I definitely have the most faith in him right now in terms of going forward. And out of all those guys, he would be the guy I would say I don't want them to move on from. Out of those four, I'd say, they got to keep Vince. You know what I mean? So it's just crazy how quickly that can kind of change. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what they do with everything. But I think that they'll make the right move. I think they'll make some of the right moves. They're going to have to start kind of making up for the last couple drafts because it feels like, well, I liked what they did in this draft, but obviously the draft last year didn't work out the way they wanted it to. So I think some of these trades could be a way to try to go back and kind of fix a little bit of what you did. Maybe try to get a for real veteran wing like we've been talking about getting in here, which they still haven't done. So we'll see how that exactly, like how all of this develops over the next couple months. But this is going to be a storyline of the season because even if they do just cut Lofton right now and move on, they are going to have to find a way to get Vince Williams onto the active roster. Because like you said, he can only play 50 games as a two-way contract. And at this point, he's dang near in the starting lineup. Like he's almost an every night starter at this point. Like when you look at it, like, dude, I'd be fine with him starting at the 3. Like that's just the point that the Grizzlies are at. So you got to find a way to not have that dude on a two-way contract. So it's just going to be interesting what they do with that. But like I always say, I appreciate everybody who listened to this week's episode of the Next Gen Podcast. Had a lot of great stuff to get to. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I was joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And we will see all of y'all on the next episode where we will be bringing you everything that we thought about Ja Morant's first game back. We will see y'all next on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.